Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my ranking of all of Guillermo del Toro's movies as director. He's produced some stuff, written some other things, done some TV work. I'm just concentrating on his movies, the movies that he personally has directed. 11 in total. I'm going to go through them from worst to best. Now, I will say I do like every movie on this list. It's just to varying degrees, that's all. But yeah, some I find a little overrated. Some I think need to be a bit higher up in people's estimations. But either way, Guillermo del Toro is a really interesting director, has a very particular visual style about him. He's very interested in fairy tales and making the monsters of the world and the monsters of the fairy tales be the characters you kind of want to root for. He has a sympathetic kind of eye towards what people consider to be the monsters of the world. So yeah, he carries that throughout all of his work. So as I say, 11 films, and at number 11 we've got Pacific Rim. This is the one that I find a lot of movie fans in the circles I operate in seem to really love this movie. And like I say, I like it. I don't love it. There's a few characters in there that kind of annoy me, that are there for humour. These two particular science guys, they're there for humour, and it doesn't quite gel with me. It's such slapstick kind of humour. It's just really on the nose. It doesn't work for me. I don't find these guys funny. I find them annoying. It's a very fine line, isn't it? Sometimes when people try to be funny and they just come off as grating, they grate on my nerves. Beyond that, you know, it's big robots fighting big monsters, smashing the living crap out of each other. If you like Godzilla, that kind of thing, then this will be right up your street. I like Godzilla. I don't love Godzilla, so I'm suitably entertained. That's the thing. I come to this for the action. I come to it for the crazy designs that Guillermo del Toro's got going on. But for me, it is definitely the least of his body of work. Number 10 is Hellboy. Now, I really like this film. As I say, it's a credit to how good Del Toro is, I guess, that this is so far down on the list. Because as far as comic book movies go, it's pretty good. It's not your usual fare. You know, it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It doesn't really feel like a DC film either. It's just this otherworldly, very Del Toro-esque kind of world that obviously comic book creator Mike Mignola, created, designed, came up with, and it just so happens that it's right up Del Toro's street. It really gives him license to come up with some character designs that, you think about the dude with the knives whose name escapes me right now. He goes a bit crazy sometimes with some of the monsters he puts in. Like, there's a few too many, I think. Obviously, he's very much inspired by Lovecraft towards the end of the film, and just having the big squid monster come, and it feels like one ending too many, goes on a bit too much. And yeah, but beyond that, I like Samael, the design of Samael, this creature that kind of, when it's killed, it kind of rebirths, but it comes back as two. So obviously, the more you kill it, the more it comes back, the more of a threat it is. So yeah, great character designs on there. I'd say the main villain, this Russian guy, is a bit weak. I would say it's his underlings. It's the ones he sends after Hellboy that are more interesting to me. But as I say, I love the images that Del Toro puts on screen, and Hellboy as a character. Well, I've got to say, I'm not Ron Perlman's biggest fan. Having met the guy, I think I had a bit of a bad experience with him, caught him in the wrong mood, maybe, I don't know. But it's always been hard to warm to him after that. But either way, he's still perfectly cast as Hellboy. It is a role he was made for. Number 9 for me is Kronos. This is the last of his movies that I got around to watching, and it just so happens to be his first. I've had it on DVD for ages, and yeah, recently seeing Nightmare Alley, I thought about time I watched his first film, because it's the only one on his CV, so to speak, that I hadn't seen. I really liked it. It's a slow burn. must be said. But again, it's got that whole taking monsters and twisting it on its head so that they're the heroes, they're the ones you root for, kind of thing. We just see this slow kind of progression of this man, this old man who's looking after his granddaughter, loves his granddaughter. They have a really good relationship, and it's just about him. He becomes a vampire essentially, not through traditional means. It's there's a bit of clockwork thrown in there because it's something that is a bit of a motif that runs throughout Del Toro's work. The idea of clockwork, something that is constructed, something that is very much designed. It has a very specific design. It's designed to do something, and I feel like that's something that runs throughout his work. There's a lot of watching a lot of these films recently. I never realised just how much kind of religious symbolism Del Toro has in his work. If you think about design, about creator, created, this, that, and the other, and I feel like that clockwork is a very suitable kind of representation of that, of there being a grand design and of people having a purpose as well. You think that a clock is made by a creator and it is designed to do a specific purpose and is very meticulously created, very meticulously designed. I like the way that Del Toro feeds that stuff into his work, and it's right here at the beginning. You've got this little clockwork device that turns this guy into a vampire, basically. The question is, will he go bad or will he keep his humanity? It's a good exploration of those ideas. Ron Perlman, once again, popping up, is a bit of a lucky charm, I guess, for Del Toro. He's one of those actors Del Toro likes to keep around. Like I say, it's a very good first film, a very good debut. You can see the promise of where Del Toro was going to go, based purely on the strength of this. Number 8, and what many consider to be Del Toro's worst film, and I would probably agree if you're going off the theatrical cut, is Mimic. Now, I'm not going off the theatrical cut, I'm going off the director's cut. When I first saw this film, I wasn't that enamoured with it. Now, even before this film, Del Toro was already kind of getting a bit of a reputation as an auteur after Kronos and The Devil's Backbone. He was definitely one to watch. So, seeing him go to Hollywood, let's see what he can do. As is often the case, you get a director who's very much an artist. They get caught up in the Hollywood machine, and Hollywood kind of chews them up and spits them out a bit. What we got with the theatrical cut was kind of a version of that. It was a hack job, basically, in which the Hollywood studio behind it, the interference, just made it less than what it should be, less than what it is. Like I say, if you check out the director's cut, the story flows a lot better. The pacing on it is much better. The themes that run throughout it seem a lot more realised, a lot more well realised. Whereas because they kind of get chopped up in the theatrical cut, it's not too clear just exactly what it is Del Toro's trying to say. It kind of gets lost in all the edits, all the interference. Whereas, like I say, not so with the director's cut. It's not perfect, again, as I say, it's still got some issues, but a lot of the issues I had with the theatrical are cleared up here. And again, you've got Del Toro coming up with some really nice kind of monsters, nice creature designs, these giant walking cockroaches, and somehow finding the way by the end of the film to make you identify with them, make you sympathise with them, empathise with them in some way. Number 7 for me is The Devil's Backbone. Now this is one that of all of Del Toro's work, it's the one that's been the longest since I've last seen it. I saw it way back when it first came out on DVD. I really liked it. Watched it with a friend of mine. It was actually him who recommended it, and we watched it together, and I really enjoyed it. I don't find it scary, and that's often the case with Del Toro stuff. He's very much into gothic horror, and I don't really think it. I don't find a lot of what he does scary. I find it more. It's more about the humanity in things. He's more going for character often, and yes, there's a spook factor to it. There's always a sense of dread, about things that are going on. And Del Toro often likes to go down the route of real gore. You know, he puts a lot of gore in his films, but I don't often find them scary in that sense. But like I say, I prefer what we get here. I prefer story. I prefer character-driven pieces. You know, and that's what we get here. It's a ghost story. I am struggling to remember much about it. I just know that, you know, I know how I felt when I watched it. I gave it a 4-star rating when I watched it, but it is the one on this list that I definitely most need to go back and revisit. So, you know, it stands to move up or down probably more than any other on this list. Number 6 is Blade 2. So Blade, you know, despite what anyone says, you know, they say X-Men, Spider-Man kind of rejuvenated the comic book movie, kind of got it going again since Batman, really. You know, like we had a bit of a renaissance, 89, early 90s with Batman. After Superman, nothing really came after Superman until Batman. And then we got a load of really crappy movies like Phantom and The Shadow and a few others that just tried to keep that flame burning, and they just weren't good enough, really. Blade is the first one that kind of put comic books back on the map, but it wasn't kid friendly. You know, it was definitely an adult film. It's an 18 rated film, lots of blood, lots of gore. But very much up Guillermo del Toro's street. When you look at the world that we have here, it's definitely something that Del Toro can work with, and he worked with it pretty well as far as Blade 2 is concerned. Coming up with these new kind of vampires in which their mouths open from the chin, and yeah, he's just, again, like I say, he's able to do something interesting with the monsters that are here, and once again humanize them. So we have this main villain played by one of the members of Bros, for anyone who was around in the 80s in the UK. Yeah, just quite a surprise, actually. Luke Goss, I believe his name is. He's actually quite a surprise in this. He does pretty well. You know, he's a very physical actor. He gets stuck in when it comes to the martial arts stuff, doing a lot of his own stunts. And underneath all that makeup, manages to actually pull off a pretty sympathetic performance as well. Again, as I say, taking this villain, taking someone who is essentially a machine going around killing, but making them sympathetic. You know, we get once we get through his story and we learn about his origins, we realise that actually he's not. He's a bad guy. Don't get me wrong. He's made of evil. He is born of evil, so to speak. But there is still a lot in there to sympathise with, to understand about this guy. And that's what I like about Del Toro's villains. They're never just one note. I'd say the film is let down a little bit by some shoddy CGI. There's one particular fight scene in which Blade is going against Cat from Red Dwarf, where it's all just CGI people fighting each other and it looks terrible. It looked pretty bad back then, so it definitely still looks pretty bad now. But on the whole, the film is a really good sequel. You know, I liked the first Blade film quite a lot, but I kind of like this one a lot more. I like the whole team aspect with Blade having to go on this mission with a team that all hate him, basically. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but he's really, in fact, still my enemy. That kind of vibe about it. And once again, Ron Perlman popping up. He's this badass in this. I love his death scene, actually. You know, all the way through, he's antagonising Blade, and you're expecting a big showdown at the end of the film, and then Blade just basically shows him who's boss, like within, boom, he's down, and that's it. So that was quite an amusing moment. But yeah, it's a really good sequel, really solid stuff. Number 5 for me is The Shape of Water, which I know will come as a shock horror surprise to many people who probably think this is his best film. It won Best Picture at the Oscars. I do think it's overrated. It's still a very good movie. It's a 4-star movie for me. I do really like it, but I do think that there isn't a right lot of subtlety there when it comes to the message that it's trying to preach. Nearly every character in this that we're meant to root for has something about them which would be considered, like the outcast of society, whether they're gay or black or, an orphan or it's just, yeah, or a fish, a giant fish. And then at the end of the day, it is a film about a woman who does it with a big fish, man. There's no way around it. It's a film about bestiality, and yeah, as much as you try and make it a metaphor for other things in life, we still have the surface level stuff going on, which is that you've got a woman doing it with a fish, man. And I don't personally see much of a reason why a romance would blossom there between these two. Beyond them meeting each other and just liking each other off the bat, which yeah. Again, it's just all a bit too weird for me, I guess. Maybe I'm just not progressive enough. Fine, whatever. But yeah, it's a good film, very good film from a craftsmanship kind of perspective. Everything's on point from visuals and sound design and music and all that. It's very well directed, but I can never fully commit myself to the central concept in the way that seemingly everyone else can. Number 4 for me, perhaps Del Toro's most underrated work, is Crimson Peak. I really liked this one. First time I saw it, I very much enjoyed it. It was one of my favourite pieces of work he'd done at that time. But the reaction was kind of middling from what I could tell from everyone that I knew. And I didn't quite understand it. And I feared that perhaps I would change perspective when I watched it the second time, but I didn't. I still loved it. It's really dark. It's really twisted. It gets super twisted towards the end of the film when you find out the various twists and turns that come about. But there's just something about it that it's very haunting and very. Again, you've got Tom Hiddleston in this, who he's a villain. There's no getting around it. He's a villain. He's done some terrible things. He's not a nice man, and yet Del Toro and Hiddleston find ways to make you kind of feel sorry for this guy in many ways. He's a monster, but again, he's one that you understand his journey. You understand why he's done what he's done. It doesn't make you agree with it. It doesn't make you condone it, but you get where he's coming from. And I like that Del Toro is able to do that with you. That he's able to take things that are on face value you'd have strong judgments about, but then he's able to make you question those judgments and feel a bit of sympathy. But yeah, a real kind of giallo style ending to this film. It takes place in a snowy environment, and then blood just everywhere. It's like I say, that allows for some visually interesting stuff, some really nice cinematography. Again, few spots of CGI that don't quite do it for me, but on the whole, I do find this film to be super underrated. I like the period in which it's set. I love the detail for it. It's just a nice film, visually speaking, to watch. It's the kind of film where you can turn the sound off and watch it and just take in the scenery. Number 3 for me is Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. This is Del Toro right in his wheelhouse. Obviously, you've got the success of the first film. It wasn't a monumental success, but it was enough to have Del Toro come back, give him a bit more money, and let him go to town. And he goes to town. And it's all practical. That's the thing. So much practical effects work in here. Really great creature designs. His big ape-like creature with this kind of metal fist that comes out on a chain. You've got the main bad guy, once again played by Luke Goss, who is once again quite a sympathetic character in many ways. And then, like, when they go to this strange village place that's underground, it's hidden away. It's under a bridge, in it. It's under a bridge somewhere. I can't remember where. Boston, is it, or something? But yeah, they go into this town, and it's just teeming with life, and it's all these practical effects, people in makeup, and these monsters that might only be on screen for like barely a second, but I love the care and attention that's gone into creating that. There's a real great sequence in which Hellboy has to fight this huge tree monster thing, and the main villain kind of makes him decide. In a way, he's like, look, are you going to kill this thing that is more like you than humanity, or are you going to protect humanity who hate you for the sake of stopping this thing? And it's actually quite a poignant moment. The death of this creature, as destructive as it is, it's quite poignant. And again, it's that thing of Del Toro making you feel for the monsters, making you see things from their perspective. There's a romance between Abe Sapien and the main villain's twin sister that feels a bit, whatever kind of thing. It's a little bit of again, that interspecies procreation stuff going on that would seem a bit more hard to swallow with The Shape of Water, because at least both of these are fantastical creatures, but at the end of the day, they're still of different species, so it's a bit, okay, how does that work? But again, it's like Del Toro's got this thing about women doing it with fishmen, but strange fetish to have, Del Toro, gotta say. But no, this film really makes me feel a bit down that we're not going to get the third film, because obviously he kind of planned a trilogy, had a trilogy in mind. We get a really cool kind of creation towards the end of this, like a weird prophet kind of thing, a seer, that reminds me a bit of the thing with the eyes in the hands in Pan's Labyrinth, but it's a beautiful creation. It's just, again, it's a character that I would like to see more of had they gone into a third film. But just from a visual standpoint, there's so much on show here. The least interesting thing about this film, in fact, is the Golden Army itself. The subtitle of the film is The Golden Army, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. So that's the thing that's kind of driving the story, in essence. But once they pop up, they are essentially the least interesting thing about it. It's everything in the lead up to that, all the different characters they meet, from the crazy cat-eating witch lady thing, to like I say, little tooth fairies, evil little buggers, and like I say, it's just, there's a lot going on with regards to creature design, monsters, and that kind of stuff, which I really love. And it's all physical, practical effects work. Well, mostly, where he can do it, he goes practical, and I just love it. It's real fun stuff. Number 2 for me is Del Toro's most recent film, Nightmare Alley. I've not been hearing a right lot about this, I gotta say. I mean, admittedly, I've not been like deliberately checking out reviews or anything, but nothing's been popping up in my feed. None of my friends that I can see have been reviewing it. It just seems to be one of those films that's floating under the radar. It's just kind of there, but no one seems to be talking it up or anything. Which surprises me, given that this is the film Del Toro makes after The Shape of Water. You'd think everybody would be all over this, but I obviously it's my number 2. I really liked it. It made me feel rough at times. We're following a central character who clearly is quite morally suspect. We get the feeling he's killed someone at the beginning of the film. We don't know for sure. We certainly know he's hid the body or destroyed the body, but we don't know the circumstances around that. So it's lingering there the whole time as we go through the film. Is this guy a hero or is he a villain? What's going on here? And over the course of the film, we see him making certain choices that he gets warned about, and we see that those choices ultimately corrupt his soul. I like the... I'm not that big on circuses. I don't really like circuses. They're not my thing. And yet, I liked all the stuff that was set at the circus here, even though some of it is really dark, really horrible. Willem Dafoe plays a horrible character. He's this ringmaster. Well, he's the circus owner, I should say. And there's a whole thing there where he's talking about geeks, where you not of the modern day kind, but of the circus variety, in which you take a broken human being essentially, and you put them in a cell for everyone to gawp at. And you make them worse. The worse you can make them, the more grubby you can make them, the more of a show you can get out of it. And there's this whole inhumane section in the film where Defoe's character is talking about this, how he does it, and it made me despise him. But I thought Defoe played it brilliantly. I thought he was fantastic in this, to be honest. And that can be said for many. David Stratton as well. He has a small role in this, but it's quite a pivotal one. The film itself is all about, well, for me at any rate, it's about not playing God. It's about not trying to have the power that you shouldn't have. It's right from the dawn of time. If you go from a biblical sense, it's mankind has sought to, or even a Greek sense, stealing fire from the gods, has been something that has been in all kinds of mythology throughout the ages. When you try to steal power from the gods, you're not going to end up in a pretty good situation. Let's just say that. And that's what this guy does. This character played by Bradley Cooper. He joins this circus, and he has this magician character played by David Stratton teach him his tricks, the tricks of his trade and stuff. But he goes too far with it. He goes to places that he's warned he shouldn't go. When you have a certain level of power, you should only take that so far. And he takes it too far. And obviously, when you steal fire from the gods, you get burned. There are times when Del Toro does go a little bit too far for me with the gore, and that's often been the case, to be honest. But I think he often does it because he wants to make his human characters the real monsters. So at number one for me, for anyone who's keeping note, is of course Pan's Labyrinth. I think this is his masterpiece. I'll be very surprised if he ever makes another film as good as this. Yeah, for me personally, this is a Best Picture winner. This is the kind of film that should have won Best Picture, not Shape of Water. Academy got there a bit late, I guess. Oh, I think this did pick up Best Foreign Language Film. So there's that. But whatever. It's like a booby prize, isn't it? No, this was contender easy for Best Film, foreign or otherwise. There's a moment of violence in it that first time I saw it really sickened me, and watching the whole film through, it while I still don't enjoy it, that moment, I get what Del Toro is going for. This is a film in which a young girl goes to all manner of fantasy kind of places. Are they in her head? We don't know. Are they real? Is it just some place she's escaping to in her head? Because everything that's going on around her, this war, is it's bringing out the worst in people. We see some genuine human monsters. Well, one in particular, this soldier who is kind of her stepfather, is a beast of a man. He's a despicable, loathsome human being, and far more terrifying than any of the monsters that this young girl faces within the fantasy world, which is kind of the point, which is that no matter what monsters we create in our minds, nothing is more terrifying than the human monsters that are around us. Some brilliant creations. The Pale Man, various other things in it. It's just wonderful cinematography. Just production design is absolutely beautiful, and just a really touching story following this little girl as she tries to navigate her way through a world that, quite frankly, has gone to hell. I really like it. It's definitely his best work for me, and it is obviously my number one. But what about you? Have you seen all of Guillermo del Toro's movies? If not, which ones are you missing? Which ones do you still need to check out? But how would you rank the ones you have seen? Leave your rankings down below. Let me know what you thought of mine. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, crack in.